What's going on, everybody? Today, we are identifying the 10 best contender buys in all of Dynasty. I'm really excited to get into this one. But before we do, Will, can you let the people know what they should do?
Absolutely. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and most importantly, comment down below what you think about our list because we got a juicy video for you guys. We got some contenders and some buys, and I am excited about this one. So, what you got for him, Eric?
Yeah, let's start it off with one of my favorite contender buys that's on the market right now. That's going to be Chris Godwin. Currently, Keep Trade Cuts wide receiver 46 and Fantasy Pros wide receiver 35. Since 2019, Godwin has only finished below wide receiver 17 one time on a points per game basis, and that was last year when he finished as the wide receiver 35. Why did that happen? Because Dave Canales took over the play calling duties last year and moved Godwin out of the slot. Since 2019, Godwin has always had a slot rate of 63% or higher. Last year, that dropped all the way down to 37%, and that led to his worst fantasy finish since his rookie season. I do expect that to change this year, though, because we've seen the coaching staff be incredibly vocal about returning him to the slot where he's at his best. And also, their new offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, is coming over from the Rams, and he said that he wants to get Godwin into the same positions that they've been putting Cooper Kupp in over these last few years. So the pattern here is clear. Chris Godwin in the slot equals lots of fantasy points, and I think that he's going to be a value in every format. And like I said at the top, probably my favorite contender buy currently in Dynasty.
Absolutely. And moving to the next buy, I have Mr. Davante Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders. He is the KTC wide receiver 36 currently as of right now, and is the Fantasy Pros wide receiver 31. So just taking a look at what has been Davante Adams' tenure here at Las Vegas these last couple of years, which have been pretty questionable in terms of quarterback play. He's averaged about 177 targets over both of those years, with 180 targets in 2022, 174 targets in 2023. They didn't really bring in too much in terms of target competition outside of Brock Bowers. I will say he is going to eat into some targets as well, but I just don't see that really eating into Davante Adams' rate too much. But I feel like he still is in that conversation of guys who can finish as a wide receiver one in the NFL pretty easily. He's one of those guys who has the volume. And in terms of just talented wide receivers who are getting it done out there, and it doesn't matter who is back there at quarterback, Davante Adams has kind of proven that he is going to be that guy. And he's someone that you can get for cheap. Currently as the wide receiver 31, pretty cheap to acquire out there. So someone you can look into if you're trying to contend, if you're trying to win right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Gardner Minshew showed that he can hold up a wide receiver one with Michael Pittman last year. He can absolutely do it again this year with Davante Adams. I love it. Let's move on to our third buy on the list here, and that's going to be Diontae Johnson. We've been preaching about him all offseason, and I'm going to continue to do it. This is one of my favorite buys in Dynasty. Dave Canales is the new head coach and play caller for the Carolina Panthers. And I know I just outlined why Canales' use of Chris Godwin was detrimental, but I actually think that he's going to have a very positive impact on Johnson's fantasy production. And there are three main reasons for that. One of which being that Diontae doesn't have nearly the same struggles as Godwin does when working out wide versus in the slot. In fact, he played most of his snaps out wide for the Steelers last year and is still one of the best separators in the entire NFL. Second thing, Canales has a track record of turning bad quarterbacks into competent ones. He did it in 2022 for Geno Smith. He did it in 2023 for Baker Mayfield, and I fully anticipate that he's going to do it once again in 2024 for Bryce Young. And the last thing here is his use of play action and pre-snap motion, both of which are correlated to higher fantasy production. The Panthers were next to last in the league last year in their rate of both play action and pre-snap motion dropbacks. So any increase in those categories is going to be drastically significant for them. And then another reason unrelated to Dave Canales that I'm optimistic about Diontae Johnson is just the total lack of target competition. Xavier Legette, Dusty Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo are like the only notable receivers left on that roster. The talent gap there is huge. So Johnson's going to be an absolute target hog on that Panthers team that I expect to be, have better quarterback play and also have a jump in overall offensive efficiency. I think a mid-range wide receiver 2 finisher better for him is absolutely within the range of outcomes.
I absolutely love that for Diontae Johnson. I love that pick right there. And in terms of coach speak, I think they've done nothing but indicate that they want to use Diontae Johnson a lot. They want him to be the guy out there. So I'm really excited about him going forward. And I think he's still got a lot of juice left.
Absolutely.
And taking a look at the next player we have on the list. I have a running back here. I've got Mr. James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. On KTC, he's the not wide receiver, sorry about that, the running back 38, and he's the running back 34 on Fantasy Pros. And he still missed 4 games last season. It's something that he does every year. He misses games, I know. But win now, he still finishes the RB18. He had 5 consecutive RB1 finishes in the last 5 games that they played last season. He still averages 5 yards per carry, which was a pretty efficient season for him last year in terms of just how well he's been doing. Efficiency hasn't really been the story of James Conner, but he's still doing really well. Forced 27 missed tackles last year, which was the 3rd most in the league. He led the league in 20-plus yard rushes at 11 of them. Now, the team did bring in Trey Benson. Do I feel like that's something that's going to drive James Conner's value down? Absolutely. But do I think this is something that's going to eat into his role? I don't think so. Something that we've been preaching on this channel a lot is when teams bring in guys who have similar talents and similar skill sets. And I think that, James Conner and Trey Benson, while Trey Benson is the younger player, does have a little bit more juice, is a little bit more explosive, I do think they do play, sort of similar roles for their teams. So I think they brought him in as somebody who could, come in and supplement for James Conner if he were to get hurt, which is something that he's proven over the years that he isn't the most durable. So I think that's just a great move on the team part for depth and just bringing in somebody who's as talented. And the offense just got better as well, bringing in MHJ. I think that's just something that's going to help bring up the offense as well. Obviously, Marquise Brown is gone, but Trey McBride also emerged. So this offense is sort of going to have a new identity, but at the same time, James Conner is still going to be a huge part of that identity, and they haven't moved away from that at all. So I love James Conner going forward. I think he's somebody that's cheap that you can go out and get.
Completely agree. I think the coaching staff agrees with you as well. They seem to be pushing for James Conner to continue in that same role that he's had. So I love that as a contender buy. The next guy on my list here is also a running back. We're talking Derrick Henry. Currently keep trade cuts running back 19. I feel like this one should be obvious. Like King Henry on the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, run and read option and RPOs. Like that's a match made in heaven. But to get more specific, I think that the change of scenery here for Derrick Henry is going to be more significant than a lot of people realize. The Titans were bottom 7 in offensive efficiency and in offensive touchdowns scored per game last year. They scored 1.8 touchdowns per game for a grand total of 30 touchdowns on the season. Contradictory to that, the Ravens were top 5 in both of those categories. They scored 3.1 touchdowns per game with a total of 53 touchdowns on the season. The difference in Henry's touchdown upside alone is enough to warrant him being a screaming value in Dynasty right now. But another notable stat that I pulled here from Scott Barrett on Twitter is the difference in Henry's fantasy production in wins versus in losses. If you look here, you can see that he laid out each year, but just for the overall ranking from 2018 to 2023, Henry scored an average of 22.5 fantasy points per game in wins and only 12.3 in losses. Just looking at the Vegas projected win totals for the Ravens versus the Titans with those splits in mind, Derrick Henry's team change is going to be worth 2.4 more fantasy points per game, strictly based on that information alone. That's massive. So I just think he's going to be an absolute stud in Baltimore, and I don't see why he's ranked this low in Dynasty right now.
Yeah, honestly, I think when you look at it, all the signs indicate that the king is back, and Baltimore's going to look really scary back there with just having that option between him and Lamar Jackson. It's going to be crazy back there for the run game. So I absolutely love that pick right there.
100%.
Now, with that being said, speaking of Tennessee, we're going to roll into a Tennessee wide receiver. We're going with Mr. DeAndre Hopkins. He is currently the wide receiver 63 per KTC. And we're going to talk about DeAndre Hopkins because a lot of people would feel like DeAndre Hopkins kind of fell off a little bit. Last year was a little bit of a down year. We're not really sure what the Titans offense is looking like, but let's take a look at it for what it is, So Davante Hopkins last year, he appeared in every game last year, all 17. So he was there every game, finished as wide receiver 25, and he hauled in 75 catches, 1,057 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's turning 32, but I don't feel like he's really taken too much of a step back, and I don't feel like his role within the team is taking a step back either. Obviously, he was still able to get 137 targets, so they still targeted him quite a bit. And when we're taking a look at when he played with Will Levis from weeks 8 to weeks 15, from that time, DeAndre Hopkins accounted for 6 of Will Levis's 8 passing touchdowns and finished as a top 17 wideout 4 times. So In terms of their chemistry, it's 100% there. Now, things that are really good to look at down here during that stretch, DeAndre Hopkins had an 85% route participation, so that's down a little bit. 29% target share, which is amazing. 17.3 ADOT and a 46% air yard share. Now, what that means is that Will Levis is willing to take shots down the field. He's willing to take shots down the field to DeAndre Hopkins, and he's willing to do it often. And those are things that you want to see out of people who can win a league for you. And I feel like DeAndre Hopkins has that opportunity. And with bringing in guys like Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd and Tony Pollard in the backfield, that's just going to open things up more for DeAndre Hopkins, so people won't be able to key in on him as much as they were, because let's be honest, who else was out there last year with DeAndre Hopkins to open things up? With that option given, I think that this offense could take off a little bit more. Now, do I think they're going to be powerhouses? No, but I think there is a role in here for D-Hop to be extremely viable for fantasy and extremely viable for win-now teams.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And also with the offensive coordinator or the head coach change to Brian Callahan, I think that that's going to bring a much more pass-heavy approach. We'll talk about that in a video, I think, later this week. We're talking about a lot of OC changes that are going to have fantasy impact, but that is certainly one of them. So, yeah, I love that pick there with DeAndre Hopkins. We'll speed it up a little bit here. We're going to go on to one of our last buys on the list. Aaron Jones is my next guy on here. He's going to be Keep Trade Cuts running back 36. Just one of the most efficient running backs of our generation. I think he's really underappreciated for how talented he's been and how efficient he's been over the years. Even through all of these injuries, he's continued to keep up that efficiency. Even into 2023, he hasn't fallen off yet. And I think that, some offensive changes there in Minnesota are going to bring positive change into Aaron Jones's value. And we're talking about the quarterback change, specifically from Kirk Cousins down to either Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy. I think the team is going to be a lot more reliant on the run. And I think they're also, especially, with a rookie quarterback or an inexperienced quarterback, going to be throwing a lot more dump offs and screens to the running backs, which I think is going to be an area that Aaron Jones is going to be benefited from very significantly. And then lastly, all of that considered, the volume bump that he's going to get from where he was at in Green Bay, I think is enough to justify him being a much higher value, whether you're talking about Dynasty or redraft in this scenario. I think he's going to be a screaming buy regardless of format.
No, I absolutely agree. I think they're going to have to lean on him a lot, too, especially with J.J. McCarthy back there. He's going to have to learn a lot, and I think they're going to lean on him quite a bit. So it should be a big year for him coming up.
Absolutely.
That being said, I'm moving to another wide receiver. We're moving to Dallas. It's Mr. Brandin Cooks, who is currently the wide receiver 82 per KTC. So we're going to talk about Brandin Cooks and why I think he's here. There's a good amount of vacated targets in Dallas now. I know we don't really love the vacated targets argument, but it is a thing that is there. And with Tony Pollard being gone and them trying to figure out what's going on in the running back room, and with Michael Gallup being gone, that kind of does leave a big void for Brandin Cooks to really step in and actually become that wide receiver 2 that we were looking for him to become last season, which he was still able to do in a way. He still scored 7 touchdowns. He had, I believe, the second most touchdowns of his career last season with 8, I think, somewhere around that. But he was able to have a pretty good season, a little bit more touchdown dependent. But I think that this year he's going to get more of that volume, and he should be a little bit more steady and dependent, and the team should rely on him a little bit more. And for those of you tinfoil hat people out there as well, CeeDee Lamb is having a little bit of an issue right now with the contract, so there may be a holdout. So who knows what's going on with that whole situation. And Brandin Cooks is very much in line to benefit from that from a fantasy perspective. So there's eyes on that. I'm not exactly banking on that. I'm imagining that even with CeeDee Lamb there, shows up week 1, and everybody's there with their full roles, I still think there's absolutely a lane for Brandin Cooks to step in and be a clear wide receiver 2 on this roster.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that Brandin Cooks really started to develop more chemistry with Dak Prescott as the season went along, and he also got rid of some of the nagging injuries that were bothering him earlier season, and you saw that with his fantasy production as the year went on. He, like you mentioned, really became that true wide receiver 2 for the team, and I expect that to continue into 2024. So I love that buy there. But that will lead me into the 9th buy on this list. That's going to be Mr. Raheem Mostert, currently Keep Trade Cuts running back 42. He was the RB4 in points per game last year, and I just don't think that the situation has changed that much for him that he should be dropping off that significantly in value. He's still first in the pecking order on that running back depth chart, according to Mike McDaniel. And I'm not that worried about Jalen Wright becoming a threat in his first year with that offense. I think it's going to take him a little while coming from a kind of gimmicky Tennessee offense to get his NFL legs under him and be a significant producer for them. So I feel like this is going to be a somewhat similar split to what we saw last year with Mostert and Achane, where Mostert is going to be, more of the in-between the tackles guy, and Achane is going to be the out-wide guy. Maybe Achane gets a little bit more volume than he got last year. I think he deserves it. But I don't think it's going to be enough of a drop-off for him not to be close to a league winner the way he was last year once again.
No, I 100% agree. The last time I heard Devon Achane news, he was talking about himself, and he was saying he might be lining up in the slot some this year and stuff. So, yeah, I think it's still Mostert season. I think they're out there having to practice doing whatever out there. So, it's looking like Mostert season for sure.
Absolutely.
So that is going to get us into the last player on our list, the last veteran buy that we have. That is going to be Mr. Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints, who is currently the RB27 on KTC, who finishes the RB3 on a points per game basis last year. Obviously, he missed a little bit of the season due to extracurriculars, but he was there with the team and still performed at a very high level. They brought in a new OC. The last guy, I actually had to look him up while we were recording this video because I forgot what his name was, but apparently he was the OC there for the last 15 years, Mr. Peter Carmichael. But bringing in Clint Kubiak, a guy that we've seen with the San Francisco 49ers, we're hoping that he's going to bring a lot more firepower to this offense, a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more tempo, and Alvin Kamara should benefit from that from a pretty good perspective. Now, when we're looking at Alvin Kamara and how he's used in the offense, some people may say, oh, well, the rushing volume isn't going to be there. It's going to get taken away. It could get eaten into by the likes of Kendre Miller or even why am I forgetting his name right now? Jamal Williams, who's also fighting for that backup running back spot with the team as well. And I would parry that with, okay, Alvin Kamara has never really been known for his rushing value and his rushing efficiency. He's really been known for, red zone touches, scoring a lot of touchdowns, and he's been known for receptions and getting it done through the air, which when you have Derek Carr back there at quarterback, which they still have him back there at quarterback, he does enjoy throwing to the running backs quite a bit. Josh Jacobs benefit from that. Alvin Kamara should benefit quite a bit from that. And honestly, I don't see that changing for him going forward. So Alvin Kamara should still be around as good as he was last year. He shouldn't be taking a step back. I didn't see any signs of that at least last year at all.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more there. I think he's got a lot more left in the tank than people realize. The check down king at quarterback is going to feed him a ton, and that offensive coordinator change is going to be very, very, very valuable for that offense as a whole because they were near the bottom of the league in nearly every statistical category. But yeah, I think that will wrap things up. That is 10 contender buys that you must go get right now in Dynasty. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked the video, like Will said at the top, leave a like on it. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all of our latest releases. And also, let us know what you're thinking of this list down in the comments below, as well as any buys that you're trying to acquire right now in Dynasty. We'd love to talk to you about it. And also, if you're interested in a deeper conversation, hit us up in our Discord, which is linked in the description below as well. You can have a conversation with us, with the community that we've built up over there, and you can have a good time. But I think that's all I got. Will, you want to round us out here?
Yeah, just make sure you guys check out in the description also the links to our sponsors over at Choice Music Group and at Do Numbers for just some cool apparel, cool music. We always play some snippets from the music, so stick around for that and check that out afterwards. And as always, if you guys made it this far into the video, we love you, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.